Fork Library today for yet another awesome cooking demonstration. This time we're going on the harvest side. So before we had some fun end of the summer vegetable concoctions, and then we had fun with pumpkins for October, and today we're going to learn some things that really make use of some winter vegetables, so that's great, and also some fun things you might want to have on hand if your family happens to come into town for Thanksgiving. So we have a lot to get through tonight, lots of little components, so I'm going to try to go as fast as I can. So please, we are very casual here. If you have any questions, or if you're like, whoa, wait, what? Just stop me and let me know what you want to know. So to begin, we're going to do a quinoa harvest salad. And this salad has everything packed into it. I just thought of everything that I love about harvest time and put it in a salad. So there's lots of little components to this salad. And the first component that we're going to make is some candied pecans. Now these are great because they can stand on their own as just a snack, or if you want to just have that on the table. If you're doing Thanksgiving this year, you might want to have bowls of those candied pecans on the table just for funsies. But they can also go into anything and lots of different things. So we will start with that component first. And like I said last time, I just got this great little burner I'm super excited about, but new technology and we don't always mix, so I'm still kind of figuring it out. I've only used it once, really. Let's see how we do. So the first thing we're going to do for these candied pecans is, and this is a very easy recipe to remember because it's like 2 of everything. So we have some coconut oil. By the way, if you're unfamiliar with my cooking, I always use whole grain and I never use refined sugar. Those are my 2 cardinal rules. And from there, it varies on the healthy scale. In my personal life, I'm pretty strict and pretty kosher. We were talking about kosher earlier. But the cardinal rules are no refined sugar and no refined flour. So that's what you can expect from my cooking. Okay, so in this recipe, you are going to want, also, the other thing about me is that I love to cook by principle. So I absolutely hate being a stickler for recipes, which is why I had such a hard time when I was going through my baking unit, because baking is very precise and it's very scientific, and you have to be exact with a lot of those measurements, or else you just simply won't have the chemical reactions that you need to make the product successful. And that drives me crazy because I'm a little of this, a little of that, make it taste right. If you know how to cook something, then you'll know what you want in it. It's just the fundamental principles of what you're doing. So what we are doing to make these candied nuts is we are making a caramel, so to speak, and we're going to bring it past a caramel stage into kind of a praline stage. So we're going to cook it just a little bit further until it's like dry and gummy, and then when it hardens, you get this nice kind of sandy coating instead of like a glossy candy snap coating. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's what we're trying to achieve. So the first thing I'm going to do is 2 teaspoons of coconut oil, and I always eyeball just because I do. Later on, I will actually use some teaspoons. You'll see me use measurings, but for the most part, I can eyeball. So 2 teaspoons of coconut oil. Now let's get this thing on. Oh, turn it on first. Okay. And now I press the plus button, and I think that does something for me. Oh. There we go. All right, so I've got my coconut oil in there, 2 teaspoons. Then the rest is super simple. If you can just remember 2, 2, 2. I've got 2 heaping tablespoons of organic coconut sugar. And I say heaping because you want to be a little on the generous side. So 2 heaping. And then you're going to want 2 tablespoons of maple syrup. it's organic and if it's grade A. So, again, be generous. Now, here's where you learn about flavor and what flavor can do for you. Everything benefits from a little bit of salt. Sweet, savory, everything. Because all it does is augment the flavor of whatever you have. Now, you don't want to over salt, right? Especially if you're doing sweet. But you definitely want to add it. Otherwise, you're just hitting sweet notes and you're not getting any of the other complex notes in the dish. So we have a good generous pinch of salt, also because nuts need salt. They just do. I don't know why. You can just taste the nut better. All right, and then you want a dribble of vanilla. I'd put about a teaspoon, which is about a cupful. Okay. And then you want, I would say, if I were looking at it, probably an 1/8 to a 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon. It just depends on what you like. See, that again, I'm that kind of cook. If you don't like a lot of cinnamon, don't put a lot of cinnamon. Put what you like. Make it how you want to make it. You may want to put more vanilla. You may want it to have rounder flavors and less spicy, sharp flavors, and you're going to add more vanilla. You may really like the kind of sweet, salty mix, and you may just want to put like a lot of salt in there to balance out the sweet. Or you might be the opposite. So you fiddle with it and figure out what you love. Okay, so this is melting down. I'm going to give it a little more pizzazz here. Get it cooking. And you're basically, you can see, it's getting well combined. Oh, this is so cool. It like warns me when I tip the pan. Wow. Thank you, my friend. Okay, and then the last two that you have to remember is 2 cups of nuts. You can put any nuts in here. It's going to work best with nuts that are a little softer and have a higher fat content. So, and the reason for that is because they will roast in the pan. If you put almonds, it's a little tougher because they have a lower fat content and they're harder, and you kind of need to pre-roast those a little bit in order to get the crunch out of them. But you're fine with pecans, you're fine with walnuts. You could probably do okay with cashews. So I am going to open up my bag of pecans here. Here's my knife. Okay. And we are putting in 2 cups. This is 2 cups. That's all right. Just put them right in there. Now you're just going to keep mixing these nuts around and evenly coat your sugary solution all over the nuts. So kind of flip them over, move them around in the pan, dig underneath, flip them again. You just want to see that all sides of your nut are nicely coated and it's getting into all the little crevices. I don't know if you can see that very well. My machine keeps yelling at me. It's not going to let me do, done an AI takeover. I cook with you, you don't cook with me now. All right. Okay, so now it's getting just to that stage where it's looking glossy. You can tell that there's still a lot of water in it by the size of the bubbles. So if you're having a lot of like little spread out foamy bubbles, you know there's still a high water content. But when the bubbles start getting larger and looking drier and more viscous, you know, more solid, then you know you're getting down to the sugars becoming caramelized.
It smells really good.
It does smell good. It's a great smell. If you want to like deceive someone, if you're not ready for a party, just like throw this in a pan and have it cooking, and it's like, oh, something's going on here. Wow, your house smells so good.
I believe it.
It's like the old wives' tale of putting an onion on the stove when your husband comes home to make him think you're cooking dinner. All right. So now, if you guys want to come come close. If you want to look into the pan, you're totally welcome to. But what's happening here is you're starting to see it really dry up. You're seeing that the caramel is starting to kind of stick to the bottom of the pan. You see that? And you can smell, and you're really smelling it cook, and you're almost thinking, ooh, it might be burning, but it's not. Just keep moving it around. You can see that the nuts are getting more sticky, and you just want to push it even further. So you want those nuts to be quite dry and quite clumpy and quite sticky. Okay? And I have prepared here a cookie sheet with parchment. By the way, I'm a huge fan of parchment. I use it always and ever. I almost never use Pam spray. I always use parchment. It's just an old habit from professional cooking. Okay. Now you can see these are starting to get really dry and really clumpy. See, I pick them up and they're kind of sticking together. Now in just a moment they will turn from glossy to dull. And that's when we're going to turn it out and let it cool. So, we're just watching and waiting. So much of this is just miraculous chemistry. It's so cool. Like the first time that I ever saw sugar invert before my very eyes, like turn into an invert sugar, I was like, whoa, because your solution is all cloudy in your mix, and then at this exact temperature, it just goes, and it gets all clear, and then you're like, wow, now I have an invert sugar that won't crystallize. Amazing. Okay, and this is what's happening here. It's still a little bit glossy. Gotta give it just a few more minutes. Wanting to get there. I can smell it's close. Now I have gas at home and it goes a little quicker. So if you're using a flame, you have to really keep an eye on it to don't leave your project or it will quickly burn. And then you will have to start over. Okay, so now we're almost there. We are close.
So can you overcook it then?
You can overcook it. Yes, you can burn those sugars and then they'll get a bitterness to them.
Do you have it on like a medium heat or a high heat?
A medium. This is not a medium. Okay, so now I want you to kind of see how that's become dry and it's kind of lost some of that gloss. You see that? Okay, so we're going to turn it out. And we're just going to spread it out. All right, and just spread it out all the way out and let it cool completely. Because you don't want to put one of these nuclear bombs in your mouth. You will melt your palate.
Can you make the batch larger than that?
Oh yes, yeah, you can double this recipe easily. In fact, most of the time when I do it double. Because I'm usually planning on giving it to a bunch of people or, having it for a dinner or something like that. So you just do 4 of everything.
Okay.
So 4 tablespoons of coconut sugar, 4 tablespoons of maple syrup, 4 cups of nuts, a bigger pinch of salt, 2 cupfuls of vanilla, okay, and then as much cinnamon as you desire. So we're gonna let that cool, and we're gonna say awesome, blossom, and then we are going to, see this is so hot, I don't wanna put it on where, I don't wanna melt anything around these parts. The next component that we're going to do, well, we'll just set it here for now, is we are going to chop up our apples. So, first let me show you what I have in here. In here, I have some roasted beets. I have some butternut squash and some acorn squash. I have some sweet potato, and I just small diced them. This is a small to medium dice. It's kind of in between. I tossed them with oil, sprinkled them with salt, put a little thyme in there, and then I roasted them in the oven for 20 minutes. And so that is another preparation you're going to want to do ahead of time. Okay? And I have about a cup's worth of the squash. I have about a third a cup of the potato, and I have about a half a cup of the beets. So an oven and everything, I would demo all of that. But no need. The magic of preparation. Ha-ha! So, there's all that. Now, I have also previously cooked some quinoa. And this is one of my favorite grains because it is full of protein and it is hypoallergenic in the sense that almost nobody is allergic to quinoa. It's not an allergen, right? And it's delicious. It kind of takes on the flavor of whatever you put with it. So it can go sweet or savory, and that's really fun. It's fairly cheap and it's super easy to make. So this is just 1 cup of dry quinoa makes about 4 cups of cooked quinoa. And you put it in, and it's just very similar to rice, except for it doesn't take as long. So you put in a pot it depends on where you get the source. Now, if you, like the Costco bag of quinoa is triple washed. So it's not gonna be bitter at all. It's like very well rinsed. But if you get like quinoa in bulk or something like that, you're gonna wanna rinse it off because sometimes it has like a very bitter powder that's on it from harvest and processing, okay? So, depending on where you get it, rinse it off, cup of quinoa, 2 cups of water, bring it to a boil without a lid, and as soon as it boils, put it on low, put a lid on it, and like 10 minutes later, you've got your quinoa. Now, the longer it has to kind of steam and fluff up in there, the better. So I like to turn it off, like after it's simmered for, several minutes, I turn it off and I just leave it. And I don't touch it, and I let it just do its thing, because those little grains are just going to continue to swell, and that water is going to continue to absorb, and it kind of dries it out and makes it fluffy instead of like wet on the bottom and fluffy on the top. Does that make sense? Okay. And this is what we call a bound salad. And that's a salad that is bound together with some kind of medium. So, for instance, a chicken salad is a bound salad because it's bound together with mayonnaise. So we're going to bind this together with a vinaigrette that we're going to make. So that's cool. So in here I've got all of my fall vegetables. I've got my beets, all my roots, my beets, my squash, my sweet potato. I've got my quinoa. And now we are going to also cut up some apple to go inside. This would be really good with like a sour apple, like a good Granny Smith. But I didn't happen to have any Granny Smith, so we're just going to go with I believe this is a Gala, what I have here. And then this one is a Golden Delicious. And you want to cut these as in a small dice or small squares. So go ahead and cut into small slices like that, or fairly thin slices, I guess. They don't have to be super, super thin. It just depends on what you want to, think when you take that spoonful, what do you want in your mouth? Do you want lots of tiny bits, or do you want lots of medium bits? I would say medium to tiny bits because the quinoa gives you that feeling in your mouth. It's a little bit mealy, Okay, so we're cutting these up into strips, and then just turn them and do your squares. And this is going to add a little bit of crunch, a little freshness, a little sweet note. This salad is definitely a sweet and savory. And you know what's funny? I don't actually like sweet savory salads, but for this particular one, it kind of works because that is the nature of harvest vegetables. If you think about a squash, like a winter squash, it has a lot of carbohydrate in it, but it can also go savory really well. And you think of like sage and stuffing, but also that kind of sweet spice that can be with it as well. So it works. But commonly, I'm not a big fan of sweet salad, just because I really love savory salad. I think probably my favorite salad is maybe chicken salad. Or like that delicious spinach bacon, that's a good one. All right, or a good Caesar. Okay, I'm getting sidetracked here. Enough. Okay, so we've got that in there. Now, we're gonna add some more harvesty ingredients. So pumpkin seeds, that's a classic. Throw those in there for good measure. Why not a little crunch? By the way, this is extremely gut healthy. So this is going to feed your flora very well. And all the bacteria in your gut lining will be very happy to get this fiber and all of these good ingredients. And then I have fruit juice sweetened dried cranberries. I like to use the fruit juice sweetened one because, as you know, I don't like to use refined sugar. And that will give a nice chewy texture in some of the bites. It will also give it a tang and a little bit of sweetness. So we have lots of different fun textures going on, lots of different fun flavors. And now, for something really bizarre, but for some reason works well, is I have some like double-aged white cheddar, okay? And everybody knows that apples and cheese go nicely together. And this is the same concept. And for this, again, I'm going to follow the same pattern that I followed with the other things that I put into my salad, is that I want them to be nice and cubed, like a little bite size. You don't want to run into something strange, like a big flat, flabby piece or a giant shred that doesn't seem to work. Everything should be consistent. It should look consistent, should feel consistent in the mouth, and all work together. Okay, so let's take a look at, let's take a look at how it looks all mixed together so far. As you can see, it's very colorful and very fun. I mean, it just looks like, a fall decorative motif. You know what I mean? It's like, that looks like yum at harvest time. So we have that. Now, to just give a little freshness and a little pop, we're going to add some fresh herbs. So I have a bunch of parsley here. I have, rosemary's so good, but not today. Not today, Alessandra, not today. But we will put a little sage in there. Okay, and let's use this parsley. I am such a fan of using herbs, fresh herbs. They're so easy to grow. I grow tons of herbs in my yard and garden. They're also just delicious. They lighten everything up. They're not too heavy on the flavor because they have so much water in them when they're fresh that you can put a lot more than you would if they're dry. For instance, I would put probably a maximum of 2 teaspoons of parsley in there if it was dried. But since it's fresh, I'm going to put a whole bunch of parsley. And it's just mostly water, but it's really going to freshen up and liven up this salad. And it gives it color. You know, we eat with our eyes, so you consider that as you're putting a dish together. You can purposely make it kind of monochromatic, right? So like a bunch of whites and tans. Or you can make it very beautiful with a colorful array with lots of contrasting colors. Reds and greens, purples and yellows. Or you can kind of do a spectrum where you have many shades of green that move into blue. There's so much you can do with color. Now, as you see, I am just using this. I'm trying to chop high because if you chop too low or mishmash it too much, you're going to bruise it and you're just going to make a big wet mash of herb, which you don't want. You don't want your herbs to be a paste. You want them to be a nice sprinkle, right? Like a magical fairy dust. So lift your knife high, set this as your ballast, and just work it up and down. The other thing I forgot to tell you guys, because I told other people, but not you, is that you will be safer if you choke up on your knife. So instead of using it like this or like this, just choke up right here between your knuckle and your thumb and hold it like that. That is a lot safer. You can control that knife a lot better. And also, it's always imperative to have the knife as sharp as possible. It seems counterintuitive, I know, but it's actually way safer because you're much more likely to have it fall and slip or, slip into your hand if it's dull. So you want a nice sharp knife and choke up on the knife. Okay. Let's just wipe that off a titch. Now, I want you to know that usually at home, you don't want to waste. Like, you're not going to waste these little bits. You can pull these off and you can put them in your salad or put them on something else. But whenever I do my cooking demonstrations, you'll see me just chuck stuff, and that's fine. But at home, we don't need to waste. Even things like onion peels and carrot shavings and stuff like that, all of that can be made into stock. There's no reason why it should be thrown away. It's flavor, and flavor is good. Okay, so stirring this all into our salad. Now we will make our vinaigrette because we have all of our components in our salad. So for the vinaigrette, now vinaigrettes are very complex. When I was a kid, my dad said a vinaigrette was just putting some oil in a jar, putting some vinegar in a jar, some salt and pepper, a couple of dried herbs, and shaking it up. I learned that's not how you reach an emulsion. So getting a proper emulsion on a vinaigrette is very tricky and takes some skill and practice. And what you're basically doing is getting all of those molecules to get so tiny and they're going to homogenize and hold together with lecithins. And they're going to hold together for a long time, longer than they would usually. And so, when you shake something that's been separated, it'll be together for a little bit, but you have to pour it out quickly because it'll separate again quickly. When you properly emulsify something, it can stay stable in that state of being mixed for an hour, for 2 hours, for a day, for several days. But it's really annoying, and it's kind of a long process, and you have to do it just right. So I override that with technology, and I just blast the heck out of it, and it just emulsifies it enough for your purposes at the time, and that's my chef mentors would be, rolling in there. Well, they're not dead yet. If they were in their graves, they'd be rolling in. But if you're a home cook and you're trying to just get things done, sometimes that's just the way you gotta do it. You can't sit there and constantly emulsify. There are things that help it. Sugars help to emulsify. Egg yolks, that's a lecithin. Also, like mustard, so those things can help to hold the bond. But also, just giving it a good whirl in the blender for a long time can help quite a bit. All right, so what I'm putting in is a shallot, but not a full shallot. I'm probably putting in like an inch-long piece of one. So about like that. Okay, so that's the extent of my shallot. And I am going to just chop that up just a bit. And then I'm going to need some lemon juice because the components of a vinaigrette are basically acidity and fat. That's the main component, acidity and fat. And your acidity is going to change based on what your flavor wants to be. And your fat will also change based on what your flavor wants to be. Who here has ever tried a really robust olive oil, like cold press olive oil? Anyone?
I think I have, yeah. It's pretty
And
strong.
it's very strong.
Mhm.
It's very
Yeah.
strong and bitter and
Mhm.
almost a little tannic.
Yeah.
So if you don't want that flavor in your vinaigrette, then you can't use that oil. So you're going to look for a milder oil. If you want to use olive oil because it's of its health purposes, right? You will have to use a lighter olive oil, one that's been a little more refined. You can't use cold press or first press, okay? Or you can use avocado oil. or you can use grapeseed oil, or you can use canola oil, something that is more mild. So I want to put in about a half a cup of lemon juice in here. So I'm going to use a little juicer. And the lemon juice is going to be the bulk of the acidity. But I'm also going to throw in a little bit of apple cider vinegar because it is full of good fermentive bacteria that I want to have included into my vinaigrette. And it's also an excellent flavor because it's made out of apples, and apples are a fall flavor. Okay, we're almost there. I think with this next lemon we'll be at about half a cup. Okay.
Is that like 2 lemons?
That's about 2 lemons, yeah.
2? Okay.
Yes, indeed. Oh, I think we're there. Yeah, we are there. Yeah, we're there. Okay, so half a cup of lemon juice. Voila. We're gonna go 2 tablespoons of Bragg's apple cider with the mother, just meaning that it still has the part of the original bacteria in there. So about 2 tablespoons. It's not too heavy on that because it does have a strong flavor. And then we're going to put in some more maple syrup because maple syrup is delicious. All right. Okay. Now, salt helps to separate fat and water and fat. So I don't want to put in salt right now. I am first going to blend this up, and then I'll add my oil, and I'll blend that up, and then lastly, I will season it with salt. So, here we go. All right, we have that well blended because the point is we don't want giant chunks of shallot, right? Now, I'm putting in about 2 cups of oil. 2 cups of oil.
Was that 2 tablespoons on the syrup?
Yes.
Okay.
So 2 cups of oil. Okay. And we're going to get this till it looks creamy. Looking good. Okay, now, let me just test this out real quick. Yeah, now what I'm looking for is the balance of sweet, sour, and fat. Because if you have too much acidity, then you will taste it. It will be that astringent, like vinegary taste. You'll be like, wow, that's a lot of vinegar. If you have too much fat, you'll taste no bite. There'll be no like flavor punch, nothing that's cutting it. It'll be just like, oh, buttery, you know? So you need just the right balance. So now, here's the part that may be a little bit of a shocker, but we're gonna put in quite a bit of salt. And the reason for that is I have all of this that I am salting, and all of this will absorb salt and flavor, grains especially. And so even though we're going to taste the vinaigrette and it'll be like, ooh, that's a little bit salty, once it's in the salad, it won't be. So I'm going to put in probably, I'm going to start with 2 teaspoons, and then we'll taste it. Actually, I'm going to go 2.5. And then we'll taste it. Okay. Voila. See where we're at. I could go for more. More salt. More salt. Okay, who wants to volunteer to come taste it? Anybody? All right, come on up. So we're looking for balance. Sweet, salty, fatty, sour.
That's very good. I can definitely see that balance in there. It's not like, or too, you know. Oh, that's good.
Okay, great. We have achieved success. Ba, ba, da, ba.
Audience approved.
Yay! Yeah, we'll put it into our salad. Now, this is gonna just be a matter of taste, how much you're gonna put in your salad. So start small, taste from there. Also understand that as the salad sits, like if you need to refrigerate this for overnight or for a couple hours, you will need to adjust the seasoning because it will absorb all the flavor, it will absorb all of the salt, and you may need to adjust it. So, a little more in there. Alrighty. Let's see how we've done now. I will be the judge of this. Okay. Okay. A little more salt in there. Alright, and now I'm going to have my assistant Samuel wash his hands really quick and have him dish this up into little Dixie cups, and then you all can try it. Hey, Sammy. Here's some Dixie cups. Here's some salad. I'll swap. Yeah. And then you can stick a fork in it. All right, and pass those out. Perfect.
And how long can you save that vinaigrette? Like, do you have to save it in the
Forever.
fridge? Or?
Yeah, you can save it in the fridge. So just put it in a mason jar or in a squeeze bottle and just stick it in your fridge. You can use it on anything, everything. Okay.
So would you have to re-emulsify it again? Put it in your fridge?
It actually, if it achieved a good enough emulsification in the blender, like if it really got, if you spent a while blending that, then all you have to do is shake it and it would go back to creamy. But if you see like a definite separation and you shake it and it just separates again, then you blend it again. Yeah, for certain. Yeah, you can experiment with lots of different salad dressings. I never buy anymore. We always just make vinaigrette. We go through it really fast. My kids really like it. They've really learned how acidity can flavor pop just about anything you eat. Oh, you know what I forgot to put in there? Our candied nuts. But you know what? Let me take this around.
Who else wants one?
And
Okay,
everyone's
I'll
taking
make some
candied
more.
nut. Take several candied nuts. Eat it with it.
Do you put the nuts inside the salad?
Yeah, you
Oh,
can.
okay.
Alright. Yeah, grab a handful. There you go. Don't be shy. There's plenty of nuts here.
So good.
Great. And we have plenty here, as you can see, so if you're nibbling in want seconds, you can have it. Okay, I don't think I need the blender anymore, so I'm gonna move that. That out of the way. The next thing we're gonna do
One more?
is, I'm gonna show you how to do a homemade cranberry sauce. And I think while that's boiling, we could probably do the pumpkin tart. Okay. One of the things that I discovered many years ago is that I hated cranberry sauce. Like every time my parents would serve it at Thanksgiving, I'd be like, oh, what is this crud? And the reason is because they were giving me crud because they would always do the canned cranberry sauce. And you know, it comes out looking like a little set salad with like the ribs of the can on it. It's like, boing, 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 you know? So, it was just always so nasty and so gelatinous and sweet and weird and tasted like tin, you know? And then one time I tried making my own cranberry sauce and I was like, what? It's so easy and so delicious. I will never go back. I will never go back. So all it is a bag of cranberries. Okay? It's so simple. A bag of cranberries. 1 cup of water. Cranberry branch. 1 cup of water.
Were they fresh cranberries or like frozen cranberries?
Fresh. And you can buy them fresh and freeze them. Sometimes I do that if I see it come on sale, and then I'll just nab a bunch and throw them in my freezer. You can do it from frozen or fresh, it doesn't matter, it still works the same. So a cup of water, and then 3/4 a cup of agave. Now I use agave, you can also use allulose. If you're using allulose, you're gonna use a cup. Agave is sweeter than many sweeteners. It's almost half times as sweet, yeah.
You said 1/3 cup?
This is 3/4.
Oh, 3/4. Okay.
So, 3/4 a cup. The only thing you remember when using agave is that it has more water in it. And so you are going to compensate for that in the recipe. So like if you're baking and it calls for a cup of milk, and you would rather use agave than sugar, then you would reduce some of that milk because there's already water in the agave. Does that make sense? Yeah.
What if we wanted to do honey? Would it be the same?
Honey is similar, yes, because it has a higher water content. Oh, I forgot I'm not plugged in. I'm like, why's that stupid thing not working? It's called electricity, woman. Okay. Yes, so similar with honey. And honey is also sweeter than sugar. So you're going to use a little less of it. So here we go. Our awesome learner here. Was there another question? Yes.
Could you put honey in instead of that?
You could.
Stuff?
Yeah, if you don't have agave, use honey. If you needed to use coconut sugar, go ahead. I'll just tell you, it tastes like brown sugar. So coconut sugar will have more of a molassesy flavor. You'll get a cleaner flavor with agave or allulose, or if you're on a low-carb diet and you need like erythritol, something like that. I try not to use, I used to use a lot of sugar alcohols, which are erythritol, maltitol, all of those tols. But there's members of the family who are kind of intolerant to those, and so we don't use those as much anymore because some people have a real digestive issue with it. Why? Because they're not meant to be digested. Because sugar alcohols are meant to just pass through the body like a fiber does. You don't absorb it, you don't use it, and that's why it's so low glycemic. It doesn't have any nutritive impact on the body. But for some people, it can do a real number on them and give them a lot of bloating and a lot of discomfort. So I like to use other natural sweeteners. Allulose is a great alternative if you're still trying to stay low glycemic, you know. But the closer you can get to how God made it, the better. Okay, so all we're gonna do is just let that boil. That's it, that's all there is to it. A cup of water, 3/4 a cup of agave, or a cup of allulose. And then you just let it simmer down. So we're gonna let that simmer down while we do other things. Alrighty, now to the cream cheese pumpkin tartlets.
Tartlets.
Yes.
Or do you have to bring it to a boil first and then turn it
Yes.
over?
Well, you're gonna just let it kind of. It's a high simmer, so it's not quite a boil. It's not a rolling boil, but it's an active simmer. So instead of like a little, it's like. It's hard to describe. Like. Come, I'll have you come look at it when it gets there. Yeah. So right now it's not doing anything. It's just heating up. But once it gets there, I'll have you come look at it. All right. I need my cream cheese. So these are easy, no bake. Make yourself some tartlet shells. You can purchase them. You can. There's a million recipes on the internet of how to make them. If you have a good pie pastry recipe that you already like, just use that and make them smaller. There's 2 ways you can get them into the baking tin. So you can roll it out, and then you can cut out a circle, and then stick the circle in and wedge it around. Or if you have one of those cool nifty dowels, then you roll your dough into a ball, and then press your wooden dowel down and move it around, and it automatically fills up the cup. Okay. Now, of course, because you don't want to spend too much time and annoyance, you're not going to weight each one, but do try to prick it. Just try to prick them so a little steam can get let out. But they are going to sink a little bit. So, store-bought is going to have the deepest shell as far as like cup, but homemade, you can't really achieve that unless you take another tartlet tin and put it on top and press it down. Like put some parchment and then press that down and bake it that way. Otherwise, they will kind of fall a little bit and lump up, and it won't be as deep of a cup. Do you understand what I'm trying to explain to you? Okay. So we have an 8-ounce block of cream cheese. Now we're going to do the cream cheese and the sweetener first, and the reason for that is cream cheese tends to be lumpy, bumpy, and we don't want that. So mixing it and creaming it with the sweetener will help to eradicate the lumps. Because the sweetener also has a texture to it, just like when you're scrubbing a bathroom with like a baking soda. It has a texture to it, a gratiness to it that is going to break up the cheese. Okay, so we're going to go with 3/4 a cup of allulose.
Where does aloes come from?
It comes from figs and other fruits. It's similar to fructose. 2, but not as hard for the liver to process. So it's a very popular sweetener at the moment. Yes, ma'am.
Could you use sugar instead of that?
You can. Yes, you can. And you would do 3/4 a cup of sugar. So allulose and sugar go straight across, but things like honey and agave are going to be less because they're more sweet. Okay. And if you're using brown rice syrup, it'll be more because it's less sweet. So, like if it called for a cup of sugar and you want to use brown rice syrup, you would use 1 1/4 cups. Okay, so we're going to cream this sucker. Oh, I can't do both. Hold on a second. Can we plug this in somehow? Do we have another?
We can move it over.
Okay, yeah. Do that.
We stick that in.
Stick it on a chair.
the chair.
I love it. I love it. Improvisation. Okay. Plug it in. Okay, let's get this going. Don't be shy with this. Get some energy going in there. Okay. And the tricky thing about getting something smooth, especially a batter, is that you want to stop often and scrape down the sides. It's a bit of a pain, but the result is better. It's always better. So, it's now getting, I want to show you guys this. So, it's now getting like this, where you have solids in the bottom, but creamy on the sides. That's why we're going to scrape it down. Because we want to get every little bit in there. So we're going to scrape down the sides. All right. And make sure that it all gets incorporated. All right. And again. You can't hurt it by mixing it too much at this point. Like, there is a point if you're making cheesecake where you can hurt it by mixing it too much, but for this recipe, you really can't. So don't be afraid, like, oh, I'm going to overmix it. You're not. And besides, you want all that granulated sweetener to dissolve. Give it a chance to dissolve. We're going to just let that blend for a minute. And then we are going to add our pumpkin. So this is pumpkin puree. Last time we talked about the difference between fresh pumpkin. Oh, come look at the simmer. Fresh pumpkin and canned pumpkin. Alright. And this we are going to put in, what did I put in? We want 3/4 a cup. 3/4 a cup of pumpkin. We're going to do it bit by bit. puree has a high water content, and we're putting water into fat, because cream cheese is fat, right? So, what's gonna be our problem? Who knows what our problem's gonna be? Emulsification. It's gonna be kind of lumpy, and you might get clumps. So we're gonna put it in a little at a time, and while it's moving. There we go. Wait till it incorporates a little bit. Okay, and now what are we gonna do? Stop and scrape it down. Because right now, we've got like this great little thing in the middle, but then there's a white layer around the sides. So stop, scrape it down, get all the cheese, get in the bottom, get underneath, scrape it off. Alright, and finally, we are going to add 2.5 teaspoons of pumpkin pie sauce. So, where's my teaspoon? How much did you say? And this is going to have a very like pumpkin cheesecake flavor to it. That's about right.
So is it better to use the full fat cream cheese or the light cream cheese when you're making it, or does it matter?
Well, that just depends on how tasty you want it. How tasty do you want it? If you want it really tasty, full fat. If you want it pretty tasty, you can use a Neuchâtel or a lower fat cream cheese. But again, you're gonna get different flavor notes because the full fat is rounder, creamier, and cleaner. And the other fat flavor is gonna be sharper, more tangy, and so almost more lemony. So just have that in mind as you're building the flavors. And there are other kinds of cheeses that are like cream cheese. For instance, mascarpone. It's going to be a little lower fat, but it'll have a cleaner taste. So if you don't want that sour taste, then you can use something like that. Okay, let's make sure I got everything in there that I needed to get in there. Yes, yes, and yes. Yes, and yes. Oh, what did I teach you guys before? A little pinch of salt goes a long way. So just a little pinch. All right, now, does anyone want to come and taste this? Come on.
I wonder. It's mine now.
There you go. Okay. So, the beauty of this is that it's very round. It's very, it's mildly sweet. It's not too much. But with all the components together, it's going to make sense. Because as you're building a dessert, you're thinking of, again, all the components. Fat, you're thinking of acidity, you're thinking of sweetness and saltiness all together. So I'm going to make two versions here so that you can understand better how that works. I have some cranberry sauce that I made previously. And I'm going to show you the flavoring. So in this tart, in some of these tarts, I'm going to put a little bit of cranberry sauce. Now this brings in acidity. This brings in bitterness. Okay? And it takes the edge off the roundness, the richness, and the sweetness. So we often refer to it as like cutting through the fat. Because in your palate, it's just giving you a break from like creamy, sweet, buttery, you know? So we'll do some tarts with this in it and some tarts with not. And you can taste the difference and just see what you like. Sometimes you want just those low notes. You just want like chocolatey fatty, that's it, you know? But sometimes you want something that's a little more balanced. And you need something to cut that flavor. Okay. So there we go for that. Now our sauce is looking really good here. The berries are breaking down. You know you're done when you're getting lots of when the foam goes away and the bubbles are bigger and it's looking a little drier and most of the berries have burst. Then you know it's finished. So right now it's still just, I don't know if you can see it, but it's pretty watery and most of the berries are still whole. So you know it's not done. So just keep letting it simmer away, do its thing. Now we take, what do we take? We take this one and we are going to make sure I'm not up in the night here. Yeah. I made some previously. We'll just use that because it's been refrigerated and we'll have a better texture. And we're going to put these into our little shells. That's probably good. Okay. Alright, now the only reason why I put them in the bag is just for mess. Because you can do it with a spoon, easily. You're just putting a dollop. So you just want to, that's not working out very well. You just want to kind of relieve yourself of having to use a spoon and creating more of a mess.
And how long did you say you refrigerated that for?
So I refrigerated that for a few hours.
But you don't have to refrigerate it, right? Or do
you?
you?
Don't have to,
Okay.
but it's better if you do.
Okay.
Alright. Okay. And it's pretty loose, so you won't be able to, pipe it up. You're just putting in portions. Okay. And then we're going to top it with whipped cream. And actually, just so you know, whipped cream is just whipped cream. So in the baking world, if you want what Americans refer to as whipped cream, it's actually chantilly cream. And that is sweetened, flavored whipped cream. Because we use whipped cream for savory or sweet. So whipped cream is just whipped cream. Chantilly cream is with vanilla and sweet cream. All right, so let's get out my other bowl here. And my cream. And we're gonna whip this up. This time we use a whisk because whisk is for air. So the paddle is for smoothing things out, for beating things up. The whisk is for adding air. So think about that as you're deciding what to use. Alright. Now, this is going to be a little tricky because we've been in this room and it's kind of hot in here. And this works best if the bowl is chilled and if the cream is very cold. So hopefully we'll get whipped cream. Put it on your highest setting. Especially because the condition of the room. If you have a very cold cream and a very cold bowl, you can put it on a medium high setting and you'll get more volume out of it. So, and then you just can add a little bit at a time. For example, put it in a cup and a half more to get it to about a medium whip, and then just add a little bit, you'll get a lot more volume out of it. But if you just want to add air quickly, like you're doing now, put it on high. Okay, now see the difference in the sauce. You see how it's much thicker and a lot of the berries are popped. Turn that down to this. Okay. Where are we at? Not quite ready. So you want to wait until the cream is somewhat stiff before you add the cheese. Otherwise it takes forever to bring it up to a thick consistency. So you just wait a little while. And meanwhile we'll make sure we have our bag prepped. And I have these Lily's baking chips that they're pumpkin spice and they're really fun. They're pretty tasty. They're sweet with stevia and orange salt. And we can garnish with these. You can also, if it's too wet for you, if it's feeling like if you're going to sit in these cups for a long time and you think they're going to soak through, you can melt this and brush your tartlet shell with it and then put your filling in. And it creates a barrier, a moisture barrier. You see our cream here. And it's getting there. It's so close. It's getting there. Alright. Then use vanilla and then use the coffee. So I put about a cup and a half of cream in there. I'm going to put about a fourth a cup of vanilla, maybe less. Doesn't need much. And just a little dribble of vanilla, not much. We're almost there. Now, you have to keep an eye on your cream because what happens if you mix it too much? You get butter, which is also delicious. But not what you're going for. And you'll know that's happening because you'll start to see your cream getting watery. And you'll be like, no, that was just like, it looked all consistent. Now it's suddenly watery in there. Why is that happening? Because you're separating the whey from the fat. Okay. So let's go ahead and fill our piping bag. And I've just got a plain tip on here. But you can use all kinds of fun tips. That's a whole nother class. There's Saint Honore tips, there's star tips, there's all kinds. And I'm by no means the expert on piping. But there are a few things these simple cooks can do to make things a little prettier. Okay. So now there's lots of ways you can do this. You could do like the little kiss, or you can do a little circle, just whatever, however you want it done. Here. Okay. Does anyone want to come and try a swirly? Come on up. Give it a swirl. Go right ahead. Give you my assistant. I'm just swirling it. That's good. Not very good. That's not bad at all. So yeah, you're squeezing. So this is your force that's squeezing it out, and then you're guiding with that hand. So just swirl it around. Keep going. You're not done. So you can decorate these lots of ways. You can just put a little chip on the top, or you can just be as simple as a little dusting of cinnamon. So if you have the cinnamon, just sprinkle a little bit on the top. Bink, bink, just like that. So there's lots of ways you can keep going, keep going. You're a great assistant.
Do all of them?
Yeah, do them all. definitely want to refrigerate these before you serve. That stiffens everything up a bit and kind of helps all the flavors kind of settle.
What were the chips that you put on it again?
These are those awesome Lily's pumpkin spice baking chips.
Oh, okay.
So
Do you usually serve it with a cranberry sauce or?
I want you to try both, and then you see how you feel about it, because this dessert can go both ways. If you want just round flavors, then leave off the cranberry sauce. But if you feel like it needs a little acidity to cut the flavor, then stick it on there. Yes, perfect. Thank you so much. Round of applause for this fabulous assistant. Okay, so in the interest of time, boom. All right, so go ahead and try one of these. Tell me what you think. You might want to, if you're interested in seeing the acid play, try both. Very good. You take one. You take two, actually. Now, obviously, your pastries are going to vary. Your pastry can be more cookie-like. These are a little more cookie-like. They can be more pie pastry, flaky pastry. They can be thinner. They can be fatter. It just all depends on what you've decided to use. And now our beautiful cranberry sauce is done. You can see that it's glossy, has this lovely consistency. You can serve it hot at your Thanksgiving dinner, or you can keep it in the fridge for up to like 2 weeks. So you can have it way done in advance. And I want you guys to taste it. Let me see. I don't want you to burn your mouth though, so let me see if this one is okay. Yeah, it is. Okay, so grab a spoon, taste the cranberry sauce, and tell me if you think it tastes better than the can. Imagine that on a piece of turkey. Okay, this is going to be a little bitter, a little sour, and a little sweet. In America, we actually don't usually take full advantage of the power of acidity in our food, or bitterness, as a matter of fact. Most of our food is usually salty or sweet. And so a friend of mine said that when she was visiting here for Thanksgiving, she's not from here, not from here, meaning not from the U.S., she said that at Thanksgiving she was just like putting cranberry sauce on everything. Because it was just like salty fatty. The whole meal was salty fatty, crunchy, salty, you know? And so she was just like putting it on everything because she wasn't used to that much richness in a meal. All right, so what do you think of that cranberry sauce?
Good. I like it.
Better than the can.
Better than the can. And it's so easy. It's just like, took a few minutes, 1 cup of water, 3/4 a cup of agave, boil it down. That's all there is to it. All right, any other questions for me about any of these items? You are welcome to have as much of this as you like. Yes?
How much time did you cook the cranberry sauce for?
In a total, gosh, that's a good question. I say that it only took about 10 minutes. 10, 15 minutes. Yeah, and you can kind of put it on the back burner and put it on low and let it simmer away. I mean, don't forget all about it, but you can kind of forget about it a little bit, you know, and just let it go. You can double the recipe. You could triple the recipe. It depends on how many guests you're having over. At Christmas time, you can manipulate the recipe and throw in some cinnamon sticks and star anise and orange peel. And then you've got yourself like an orange spice to go on ham or to go on goose or something like that. So anyway, as you can imagine, there's a million things you can do with that, and it's just so much better than from the can. as is everything, always so much better than from the can. So my big encouragement is cook fresh, cook for yourself as much as you can, cook from scratch. Don't be afraid to get in the kitchen and try things, and don't be afraid to use alternatives. Like as you can see tonight, we used alternative sweeteners for everything, and it wasn't so bad. You can live with it, right? So don't be afraid. And try to incorporate as much nutrition as possible into every dish. Like the kitchen sink is in this salad. But you know what? It's okay. It tastes good, it looks beautiful, and this is like very powerfully nutrient dense food. So, you know, that's what you want to do. Cook fresh and cook for fun. Try to make it taste good. Try to balance your flavors, salty, sweet, bitter, sour, and yeah, and have a ball. So thank you for being with me tonight. I'm so glad you came, and we will maybe